everybody, and welcome to Geopolitical Trends live stream. So excited to be with you on a weekend here talking about these fascinating developments. It's an interesting topic, and I happen to be very, very familiar with it. So I figured, why not do a live? By the way, just released the video on it this morning. As I promised you, I said I will do a recording, but I will also do a live stream. So again, I'm just so excited to be here. So before I'll get into anything, like I always do, first of all, I would like to extend my sincere thanks to the channel members and supporters, and I'm gonna give a shout out to some new members, and some of you have rejoined. So I'll start with the members first. You have Koi Choi Hoi, good to have you back. Then there is Quasi B, Stephen Lee, Ramzi Abdurrahman, and Ariel Popper. Good to have you guys as members. Then we have supporters also. There is Agus Jessup, Ken Schaefer, Andre Ray, and Louise Mann. Louise Mann, I do see you right here. There you are. Good to have you as a support for the channel. I truly appreciate it. And for you guys, whomever is the first time landing on this, if you will be kind, just subscribe and hit the notification button so you will be notified every time I upload a new video or do a live stream like this one. So anyway, so excited to be here. By the way, guys, if you can give me a thumbs up as far as the sound to make sure, and also type in where you are joining me from. I always like to read. I always find it fascinating. So okay, great work. So yeah, if you can tell me if the sound it's good, and we'll be good to go. So what are we gonna be talking about today? And I'll be checking back and forth here to make sure that some of you will perfect. Gabriel Bahat, thank you so much, sir. I appreciate it. So it's just I can tell sometimes if it's working or not. Also, I'm seeing who is joining me from London. Oh, Louise Mann is from London. Good to have you here. Josh from Philippines. Tash for Einar from Berlin. Wow, good to have you. Good to have you here. I'm sure you had a chance to look at the video just released about the German economy. Yeah, they are not disclosing the truth about it. So they kind of minimizing the impact. Well, the truth is the truth. You can sort of be wishy-washy about it. I have Joel from Maryland. Good to have you. Jean Emar from Belgium. Good to have you. Josh Joplin from Philippines. And let me see if someone else will. And I'll go back again later on, guys. Just sometimes it takes a while, so we can just get on with what we're gonna need to talk about. So, all right, what we're gonna be covering today. Well, as I said earlier, it's an interesting topic, and again, it's because I am very, very, very familiar with it, with its geopolitical dynamics, its economic, its social, its cultural, its linguistics. I happen to speak the language of the Middle East, Arabic, that is MS, Modern Standard Arabic. So now, why it's an interesting topic? It's because whoever thought this, no, some, as I said in the video when I recorded, there was a surprise to some. It wasn't to me. And again, I'm not showing off here. I'm just telling you the facts. I argued this for 3 or 4 years ago, that it would be just a matter of time. And here it is. When you have now the conversation about join the Navy, you don't call it or you don't give it the status of an alliance yet. This is work in progress. But the key to it is that this Persian Gulf sort of joint Navy in coordination with China. What is the message there? So, and those are basic questions we need to ask. For example, is China filling the U.S. vacuum void in the Middle East because the U.S. is exiting from the Middle East? In other words, most countries in the Middle East are moving away from the traditional ally because it's a reality. Excuse me. It's a reality. We can't deny it. And I'm going to detail for you how that is, so you'll have a better understanding of it. The other question that we need to ask within this development, which is a key question, as a matter of fact, I also give a credit to one of our viewers here in this channel that really asked the question, and which is a logical question. And by the way, guys, make sure you read the comments that's been posted on in response to videos and so forth. Really, it's worth reading. And I always say thank you to whomever posts this, because those are worth knowing about, some historical facts. So it's worth reading. So the question that we need to ask is, will countries in the Middle East, Persian area or not, Middle East in general, will countries in the Middle East start moving away from US in a way of reducing US military presence on their territories? That's a legitimate question. And if you know the answer, if you can put it on a chat box and I will check it out later. I'm not going to provide my answer right now till towards the end, because it's a very key. And I wrote about it in a book anyway. So let's do our tour around the world, because it's very fascinating that you need to see what's going on. First of all, let me say thank you to KL. Thank you so much for your super sticker. I truly appreciate it. And thank you for the last super sticker on the other channel also. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Let me share some images for you, and I will go back later and read up as to where you're joining me from in this particular session here. So here's the thing. As I said, China being the party, the wild card into all this, that is very crucial. And you need to understand it. It's not, as I said earlier, does not meet the status of an alliance yet. They are working. They are works in the process or progress, as we say. So let's go to our tour around the world here. And let me remove this one here. There we go. And because you need to know a few things that's going on. So the first one is this. It's the Mr. Putin, the Russian president here. It's very interesting. Why is this? It's because Putin will be, get this, guys, will be visiting a NATO member. Yeah, don't be shocked. He will be. And guess whose country is that we're talking about? We're talking about Turkey. Because you all know in March, the ICC, the International Criminal Court, issued an arrest warrant for Putin. Well, who's gonna give the ICC the credibility it deserves? It does not, because it's cherry picking who we can prosecute and who we can't. You all read between the lines, right? You know what I'm referring to here. So come on, if we are to say the ICC is playing by the rules, it's nonsense. The international order, it's messed up. Let's just say it the way it is. Well, here is the interesting thing about why Putin is going to Turkey. Well, first of all, because the bilateral relations is getting stronger. There is also an economic incentives, and it has to do with the gas pipeline that Turkey might end up getting one by which it sells gas to Europe, charging 5 or 10 times the amount. But the key to all this is that Turkey is not a member, is not a party to the Rome Statute. Rome Statute is by which the ICC was established. So basically, President Putin has immunity if he lands in Turkey. They can arrest him. That's just the bottom line to it. The next one is this one here. Oh, guys, don't cringe. Don't cringe. You all know Secretary of State Anthony Blinken. You give him the proper respect. You might disagree with whatever, and he's not qualified. And I be the first one to say this. Not qualified for the position, but still, I have to give him the proper respect, because that's how it ought to be in a diplomatic setting. Just because you disagree with someone, you don't downgrade them or whatever. You talk objectively, so you give him the proper respect. So Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, he will be visiting China. Well, by the way, He is the third senior official to visit China, that is. But before that, there was some other thing pertaining to Saudi Arabia, and I will tell you why. So the idea of he's going to China, what for? So what will be the reason for going there? Okay, after bashing Chinese, after sort of doing every tricks on the books to sort of reduce or minimize the progress of the country, do you think the Chinese will want to sit down with you? So what do you guys think? Should China give the platform or the audience to Secretary Blinken? Just leave me the answer on the chat box. What I was going to say, the interesting aspects about this, because he's calling about, let's manage the relation responsibly. Let's explain, and explore the possibilities of cooperation. How can you say that when you are the one fomenting tensions? That's just mind-boggling. Yeah, it's straightforward. It's mind-boggling. So the idea that you think about this within the context of what's going on in China as we speak. What am I referring to here? I'm referring to this picture right here. Check this out, guys. You guys know who this is, right? This is Mahmoud Abbas, the head of the Palestinian organization. He is still in China. I think he's leaving tomorrow. He was in China for a 4-day trip so far. He's still there. But look at the receptions. I watched the entire reception because I had to listen to his statement and I had to listen to President Xi's statement, of course, translated, that is. In the case of the Palestinian, I can read his language. So I read it in its original form, but for the Chinese, I don't speak Chinese. So what was interesting about this one here is that this in itself is a message to where is the center of the world as far as peacemaking? Who's becoming the global peacemaker? That is what's at the heart of this picture. As we always say, picture is worth 1,000 words. And the last one I'll share with you before I'll jump into the topic, it has to do with this picture here, which is very ironic anyway. Guess who that guy is? That's Evil Bill. He's known in Twitter as Evil Bill. But the question is not about that. The question is, what is Bill doing in China? And why is he going to China? He's not even a politician. And by the way, this is the guy who is advocating for your health. This is the guy who went to India and introduced in vaccines that kind of created issues in India. That's why India kicked him out, because India started to notice the kids born, they are born with defect. So whatever it was in that vaccine. But anyway, but that's not the point. The point is, you look at now as far as the business community heading out to China. Mind you that Apple just removed its operations from India back to China. So this is what's going on. That's why I figured, no, you need to know about that picture because it's very, very important for you to put things in perspective. All right, let's talk about our topic of the day. And as I said, again, China and the Persian Gulf. For the Persian Gulf, by the way, you look at those 4 countries. We're going to only focus on 4 countries here. You got Iran. That's the flag on the left. You got Saudi Arabia on the right. Then you got the Oman. This is the country of Oman with its capital of Muscat. And you have the 4th one is United Arab Emirates. Okay, those are the countries that are now in the middle on the Persian Gulf that are coordinating. That's the key word. They are coordinating with China as far as creating a joint naval force. You can use the force. You can use the term. You can use the term force, or you can use the term an entity. I just would not, personally, I would not categorize it as an alliance yet. But this is not about just that. This is about a much bigger picture. And I already did the video on it, and I'm not going to be repeating myself here. The only thing you need to understand the big dynamics of this, because who's taking the lead on this? You got two main countries, Iran and Saudi Arabia. This what explains, and I can tell you this, guys, this what explains why, for example, what's his name? Secretary of State, Antony Blinken. Why he went to Saudi Arabia? It's because the concern, despite what he said about, oh, we want to talk about Yemen and all, it's nonsense. No. Because Secretary Blinken was the third, get this, guys, the third senior U.S. official to visit Saudi Arabia since March. Why? Because the world woke up to the news of a Chinese-sponsored deal between Iran and Saudi Arabia. Those are our arch enemy forever. It goes way back, since the beginning of relation of Islam, that is. And we don't even need to go that far back. You go just for the last 1,000 years. That's it. That's how old it is. So basically, China was able to achieve that deal. Of course, it didn't work overnight. Let's just make this clear. As I argued back then, China is working behind the scenes. And now we're seeing the results of it. So when you got those countries, all of them joining, and you have now even France, believe it or not. Check out this picture right here. Even France, not this one, I am sorry. If I can find it, I hope I have it. Yes, I do. Right here. Check this out, guys. Who is that guy on the right? That's Emmanuel Macron. So you all know about his interest in joining BRICS, right? Now he's reaching to Saudi Arabia. It's not a laughing matter, because this is where you need to understand how the dynamics of geopolitics are. And again, I am a believer. If France hold its ground, per se, and follow through, France will become the turning point when it comes down to the Western hegemony altogether. That's almost like this is the beginning of the end. But of course, France is not looking at it from that perspective. France is looking at it from an economic perspective. That is the reason why. So, and this is why you have to put this developments as far as the, what you call it? The joint navy. You have to put this within the context of two things. Really, really important. One is economic, and the second one is geopolitical. So, and the idea, and I have a few notes here that I can share with you, it's for you to understand the big picture of it. Because China also accepted this for a reason. China's not doing it because it feels like it. There is no such thing in geopolitics as, oh, I feel like doing this. No, there's no such thing. And I'm telling you this based on fact. So economically, when you look at China, Iran, and Saudi Arabia, what do they have in common? Can anybody tell me? So if you can put the answer, let me check if you can put. What does China, Iran, and Saudi Arabia have in common economically? Let me just see, guys, because I always say, I like your engagement. So it's not about me just sitting here in front of the camera and talking. I can talk, especially about this topic. I can talk forever, but I like your input because your input matters. Your opinion matters. That's how important. So let me see if you put any answer to that one. Why do you think that is? Development and de-dollarization. That's one way of looking at it. BRICS is another one. Yeah, but there is one key fundamental issue based on which most economies depend on. I'm giving you a hint. So that's again against Washington hegemony. That's one. Well, it's because U.S. decline is a fait accompli. There is no point of return. You look no further than how ill-conceived and fragmented and our foreign policy decisions are. It's no-brainer whatsoever. But there is one key. You got it, Sang Tang. You got it. It's oil. It's very important because any economy's prosperity depends on access to energy. That just fact. That's reality. Despite what you hear about this Green Deal and green energy, it's nonsense. Look no further than what's taking place in Germany right now as we speak. Yeah, that's just common sense. I just don't get it when people fall for things so quick without taking a step back and think. So the idea that China is getting involved, again, because China has to look after its own interest, and rightly so, because its economy depends greatly on access to energy. You got the two main oil producers in the world, Iran and Saudi Arabia. What else would you want? And can you imagine if you can break a deal between the two of them, the arch enemy, which exactly what China did? This is what's important about all this. And speaking of, as a matter of fact, today, at the time of this, believe it or not, let me see if I have the picture because I tweeted on it. I don't know if you guys follow me on Twitter or not, but if you do, you'll see one tweet there that, yeah, I don't have the picture for you guys here. Sorry. The reason I'm saying this is because the Saudi foreign minister is right now in Iran, cutting deals for investments. Yeah, that's what's important. So in this case, for China, both countries, Saudi Arabia and Iran, will always be indebted to China for breaking the deal, because this deal in itself is going to open up an economic pathways and change the geopolitical landscape in more ways than you can even imagine. And of course, China's going to benefit from that. And rightly so. Because that's in international relations, it's always about your national strategic interests. This is with the assumption that you do it legally and the right way and without invading countries, without taking their resources, without. You got the idea. So that's what's in it for China. Okay? What's in it for Iran and Saudi Arabia? Well, if you got Iran and Saudi Arabia, the lead-in, that's why. Now you see the reason why I wrote the two books, one on each country, because you can't talk about Iran without talking about Saudi Arabia and vice versa. This is what we were able to manage, we, the United States, for the last 50 years, creating that wedge between the two. You all remember the Iran-Iraq war. I'm just to remind you here historically, we were providing weapons to both sides. There's nothing secret about it. We all know. So the idea that now we kind of got, when the world woke up to the news that China brokered a deal between arch enemies, oh my gosh, it's because now the foreign minister, Saudi foreign minister who's in Iran, this is the first trip in about a decade. And with this establishment of a joint navy, that just tells you where things are going. It just makes more sense. And the reason, again, why? You all know, again, I forgot. I'm sorry. I should have put a map of the Persian Gulf. So you see that narrow strait. Now it's going to be managed by this joint navy with all the technology that China is going to bring in, because China is going to contribute somehow. But again, remember, keep this in mind, guys, because you're going to be reading about it and you're going to hear statements to the contrary and so forth. It is not an alliance in terms of military. That is not. As of today. Could things change? Possibly, possibly not. So this is from an economic perspective. So, and again, you're going to have to think about in terms of how Oman is going to benefit and how United Arab Emirates is going to benefit. Well, two of them, both of those two countries, each one of them has an interest. Oman has always been, since the late head of the country, Qaboos, Sultan Qaboos, he died. His son took over now. And Oman has always been stable. It's a small, very tiny country, but it's rich in natural resources and doesn't bother anybody. But Oman has always played a key role in the Middle East, which most people have no clue. Believe it or not, you guys know what that deal is, or that role is. Oman, now don't confuse this with Amman. Amman is the capital of Jordan. Oman is the country. So they are almost similar in pronunciation. But if you speak the language, you will know the difference. So Oman has always been, believe it or not, behind the scenes, the power broker when it comes down to the Persian Gulf area. Because they're there, they are in a neighborhood. And they always had, and they still have, and I am sure they will have, a good relationship with all. Oman was one of those really neutral because it's so small. Oman doesn't need enemies. So, and as a matter of fact, the talks, believe it or not, there is now an ongoing talks behind the scenes between the United States and Iran. Why, you guys, do you think Iran all of a sudden received a $3 billion from its frozen assets in Iraq? Because we asked the Iraqis to release the funds because we had a conversation behind the scenes with Iran. So despite what you hear and read and see on the idiot box, the TV that is, and the mainstream media saying it's nothing but hypes, you have to really understand the depth of what's going on. I spend a lot of time in the Middle East. And as I said again, I am very familiar with the geopolitical dynamics in the region. I speak the language, so you kind of, when you communicate with them, you communicate in their own language. So you understand things from the source. That is what's important. So despite what you hear, we are talking to Iran behind the scenes. Why? Because we are concerned about this development now that's taking place. Despite what the spokesperson for the 5th Fleet in Bahrain, Commander, said, like I said in the video, oh, you can trust the Iranians. Well, it's media consumption, no more, no less. It's to divert you from the reality. That is where the difference is. So to understand those dynamics now, you got those Persian countries, in coordination with China. You'll see where this is going. Because, as I said, all those 4 countries, Saudi Arabia, Iran, United Arab Emirates, and Oman, they all are rich in oil. And when you join forces with China, China will want something in return, which is, of course, access to oil and access to the market, but China also is going to provide assistance with certain aspects. Now, there is one key that I want you to be aware of, and I will share it with you as I move forward, and it has to do with the military technology. This is why we are concerned. And we figured, we better cut a deal with Iran, because what are you reading right now about this issue? Is that there is a conversation about prisoner swap. Let's really get to the heart of the matter and not sugarcoat that. Yes, it might be taking place, the conversation about the prisoner swaps, but what's at the heart of it? It's this, geopolitically, now that's the economic, is accessing the energy sources for China, but also for Iran and Saudi Arabia, securing the market of China, because the demand in China of energy ain't gonna go down despite what you hear, this green energy and all nonsense. Yeah, I will use the term nonsense. China's gonna be consuming more oil than you can even imagine as it moves forward, because without access to energy, the economy will stall. Look no further than Germany or Europe as a whole. So that is the reason why. So geopolitically, and once again, guys, what I'm going to share with you, tie it to the question I asked at the beginning. And what did I say at the beginning? Will some countries reduce or stay away from the US gradually by reducing the US military footprints on their territories. This is what the geopolitical aspects of it is. And the way you look at it, if you take those 5 countries, Iran, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Oman, and China, what do they have in common? They are all at odds with the United States. And this is, once again, I find it very challenging for the Secretary of State that is going to China. How can you sort of address the other party in such a way that doesn't show cordiality? It doesn't show the diplomatic respect. It doesn't show the idea of talking to someone on an equal footing. You know better than them. They know less than you. You know, and that's why I don't get it. You all remember the Alaska meeting, right? A couple years ago. You know, we did a show, and Ross and I, we did one. I remember that one. And I was floored when I saw the behavior of the U.S. delegation. Yeah, no need for that kind of attitude. In diplomacy, you can achieve much with that kind of attitude. You know, there's the saying, just get along to move along. That's the idea of it. So if you want to, and this is why I don't buy the statement that the State Department is saying, oh, Secretary of State Tony Blinken is going to China to figure out the responsibility of 2 countries to cooperate. How can you expect this when you are fomenting tensions in Asia right at China's doorstep? No different than what we did with Russia. Back then, you know, when I was doing the research, or even before that, right after the disintegration of the Soviet Union, I used to have conversations with some close friends, and at that time I said, you know what I'm a bit concerned about right now? That we consider ourselves won the Cold War. Well, the Cold War never ended to begin with. It was an illusion in Washington to begin with. You know, it was an illusion. The Cold War has never been won. Yes, the Soviet Union ceased to exist, disintegrated per se. And back then I argued that my big concern will be if we are not to adhere to the agreement we made with Mikhail Gorbachev at that time, that when the Soviet Union ceased to exist, we are not expanding an inch eastward. We did say this. I documented it in the book with a reference coming out of the horse mouth, as we say, from the former Secretary of State, James Baker. And he was in Moscow where he said that. And yet, right after that, we expanded 3 times. 2004, 2008, 2014. And now, recently, we just added Finland, number 31. And soon, possibly Sweden, which will be number 32. So where are we? And again, it's ridiculous. I mean, again, I laugh out of stupidity of those who are formulating American foreign policy, and you wonder why we don't understand. We seem to be just reacting to events because we don't have qualified individuals who do possess an in-depth, who do possess an understanding of what global affairs are all about. You can't be treating a country mediocre, what's the word I'm looking for? I draw a blank on it. I don't know. So I forget. Anyway, you can't be treating a country in a way that you don't show respect. Disrespectfully. That's the word. Disrespectfully, and assume they're going to want to sit down with you and have a conversation. That just doesn't make sense. The logical thinking would not accept that. And this is exactly what is happening. So geopolitically, as I said earlier, you're going to be seeing now a shift, given that the 2 main countries in the Middle East. And literally, when you talk about Middle East, who do you talk about? Let's just face it. Do we hear much about Oman itself? No, you don't. You hear about Saudi Arabia and Iran. The bottom line to it. Of course, because we set it up that way, especially for Saudis. And after the Iran-Iraq war and after the Gulf War, whatever, thanks Charles to set up that boat. In the case of Iran, is differently because Iran have never submitted to the will of the United States, even since we imposed the sanctions back after the 1979 revolution. Yeah, they survived. You're looking at 38 to 40 years now, and they're still standing. That's something we had a hard time accepting, because the assumption was, we're going to bring down a system or a country to its knees economically. And it didn't work. It didn't work with Cuba either. So, and this gives me an opportunity to say, and I don't care who's listening or watching, I hope somebody from State Department is watching this, that sanctions do not work. Because sanctions going to end up hurting the average citizens that have no say into the policies. That's like us American. Do we have a say into what the United States is doing in Asia right now? Do we have a say into what's going on in Ukraine? No. American people have no say. Makes you just question democracy. So, all right. So that is where one of the challenges, both economically and geopolitically. But geopolitically, I'm going to elaborate a little bit more on it, because that's let me first of all take a look. In case any of you put a super sticker, I want to say thank you. All right. Oh, Boone, thank you very much, Boone. Happy to be here. Will the Trump presidency change KSA alliance? It can be that simple, right? For sure, Boone. It's because, first of all, they don't want Trump to be a president anyway, because if he's indicted, according to the U.S. regulations, laws, and constitution and so forth, an indicted president cannot be running for office. That is the reason why the charges came out at this time, early. However, there are a conversation behind the scenes suggesting that he could win the presidency again, and you're going to see a major shift. My big concern about Trump, and I have nothing against the guy, Trump does not have a grasp of the foreign policy, and if he leaves it to the individual aides and so forth to formulate that, you're going to be seeing competing agendas into structuring a foreign policy that advance one particular agenda over another. And guess who's going to be harmed in the process? The American people. Because, mind you, and I'm going to say straightforward, wasn't it Trump who initiated the trade war with China? So how do you expect this to move forward? So that is one of the key that we're going to need to keep in mind. All right, let me go back to my notes here, because I want to provide you now my insights, my personal one that is based on my own analysis, that when I wrote the book about both, one about Iran, one about Saudi Arabia, I addressed this particular aspect of the role of China. So that's a cup of coffee, by the way. It's brewed at home with cinnamon and turmeric and butter, believe it or not. It's good to put a little bit of butter in your coffee. All right, geopolitically. Or let me just put things in a geopolitical context for you. So, and of course, for me to do this, I have to go back a few years ago. And I'm not going to go way back, like the history of what. No. I'm just going back about a few years. Specifically to when the GCPUA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action regarding the Iran nuclear deal, was reached between the P5 plus one, P5 being the member of the UN Security Council. You got France, UK, China, Russia, and the US. Yeah, I made a mistake last time by saying Canada. I didn't mean that one. So it's France, not Canada. So P5 plus one, the one was Germany, and of course the other party was Iran when they achieved the deal. So And why is this important for you to understand? It's because this one, by the time that deal was reached, the geopolitical narrative will start to be reshaped as far as what's expected in the Middle East. Now that the sanctions were lifted, you got a lot of Western countries, especially in Europe, wanted to cut a deal with Iran in different industries. You got Sweden, you got France, Germany, Austria. I do remember. I put it in the book. It was few countries. You know, this is why. And again, just think about it for a second. Take a step back and think about it. What will be the reason for France to consider joining BRICS? Because France understand who's coming into the BRICS soon. And the two main ones are Iran and Saudi Arabia. That's a lucrative market. As a matter of fact, after JCPOA was achieved, France had a deal with Iran, especially in the car industry, because France is known for Peugeot and Renault, and they had a deal with Iran inside. But the moment Trump came, he was forced. And by the way, it wasn't Trump out of the top of his head decide to withdraw. No. The way it works in America, the American president has no power. The American president is like, just being used whatever direction the elite wants him or her. And we will always have him, not her, apparently, wants that direction to go. That's like what's going on right now with President Biden. Do you think he's in a position to make any decision, let alone the gaffe that just said yesterday? I don't know if you had a chance to listen to the speech, how he ended. You know how he ended the speech? God save the Queen. That's embarrassing. I would say, Mr. President, you need to leave. Leave the office and let the vice president step in fill in for whatever time, because that's more embarrassment. God lives. God long live the Queen. Which Queen are we talking about? And who cares for the Queen? And that just shows you the mental. Let's not sugarcoat it. And again, I have nothing against President Biden. He's another human being, just like me. So you give the proper respect, but we're talking about the fate of a nation here. You can't have those kind of emotions. Oh, I feel sorry for the guy. No, there is no such thing. You either do the job adequately or get out. Simple as it is. And this is one of the issues back then. So just to go back to my point as to why Iran was seen in the light of some Western countries like France, like Germany. And that is the reason why we pulled out, because we didn't want industries to go to Iran. It's no different than what we end up doing regarding the Ukraine. Do you guys know Ukraine used to have a very interesting industry in Europe? Agriculturally, it was very at the top. But we didn't want any closeness between Europe and Russia, because Europe was getting so much energy from Russia at a discounted prices, unlimited amount. And this is why I believe, and again, my personal opinion, what we end up doing regarding this Ukraine situation is going to end up being the downfall for the Western hegemonic collectively. And this is why I am leaning more towards is France. And I go back to France again, because I wonder, is France just testing the water, or is it really France want to embark on a different journey? Mind you that Emmanuel Macron is not running for office, so to him it won't matter. Does he want to cut a deal now so he can secure some economic ventures later on? What do you think? So this is where the idea of geopolitically, just to go back to the Middle East idea, as to how with the GCPOA, it became the concern about, okay, is Iran's going to sort of expand its sphere of influence militarily, economically, and geopolitically? And the narrative that was back then, because I did the research, so I have the data, I have the facts, the evidence, and so forth. The narrative that was emanating from most of Western think tanks is that, well, Iran wants to spread its ideology. No, it wasn't about that. It was about the concern that now the deal have been reached, we are concerned that it could change the dynamics in the Middle East. And here it is. And that is exactly why I am not surprised as to China being part of this deal. Why? Because China has been working with Iran. There was an article that I wrote back in 2017, and by which I said back then, it was during a visit by a military, high-ranking military, Chinese military to Iran. And I said, this to me is a sign of what lies ahead as far as joint ventures, militarily speaking, down the road. Because this will contribute. When I say this, I'm referring to China's assistance on a military technology for the Iranians, and now the Saudis, because Saudis were also buying weapons from China behind the United States back. Once again, why do you think high-ranking officers from the United States government keep going to Saudi Arabia? Why do you think France right now is reaching out to MBS? Mohammed bin Salman, that is. Iran also understood back then, or understand now. No, I'm sorry. Iran understood that by having China and Russia helping with the nuclear deal, they're going to get something in return. What they're going to get? Access to the market. Because you don't ignore Iran's market in the Middle East. And over what, a 95 million population, closer to 100? You don't ignore that market. It's a sizable market. And Iran kind of stood on its own, basically. So basically, where our concern was is that the shift in the geopolitical landscape of the Middle East, that will not be to our favor. And here we are. So, and the idea, we didn't want to see China making any deals. Why? It's because that means the world will have now to start treating China on an equal footing, and something the West is not ready to accept or admit. And once again, it puts at the forefront what is the mission of Secretary of State trip, Antony Blinken trip to China. What is going to be talking to Chinese about? So that just and this is why it behooves, in my opinion, it behooves the US not to antagonize China. I am not saying we should be scared of China, or we should be scared of China or afraid of China. That is not what I'm saying. There is no such thing. As a matter of fact, I don't even believe in that. If you have the will of the people, they can stand up to whomever. Look what just we did in Vietnam. Did we end up winning in Vietnam? You know, Afghanistan, Iraq. Because it was the will of the people. You know, once you conquer your fears, you know, an F-18, F-22, F-35, whatever, it ain't going to scare you. So it's the same thing. That's what I see. And again, and I'm saying this from a geopolitical context. I'm not saying it because we should be scared of China. There's no such thing. I don't believe in that. It's just the US should understand it behooves it not to antagonize China, because doing so would not be in the interest of the United States, especially now in the Middle East or even in Asia. You're going to be seeing some changes coming up. As a matter of fact, be on the lookout for a video I'm going to be releasing for you. And as a matter of fact, if you guys want me to do a live stream on it, because I can only cover so much in a recording video, because I don't like to do those 45 minutes videos. I don't like that. I like concise to the point. But in live stream, I can elaborate more. And the video I'm going to give you a heads up is about the population in Japan. What are they saying about their country being entangled into the Taiwan-China issue? 80%, 80% of Japanese do not want their country to be involved. As a matter of fact, they're saying out loud, stay out of it. Yeah. And by the way, this wasn't reported here. I had to find that out elsewhere. It's no different than what it is in the Middle East right now. But what we are witnessing in the Middle East is the shift. This is from Iran perspective. Now you look at it from the Saudi perspective. So, and again, things don't happen in a vacuum in geopolitics. There's no such thing. And I challenge whomever is saying this. Oh, I need to put my charger. Sorry, guys. I forgot. I get excited and I kind of forget that I need to plug in the computer. Otherwise, it will go dark. So, so the idea of now, as I said, I talked about Iran. Now we're going to talk about Saudi Arabia, because you can't ignore that. Saudis do play a role. Yeah, despite the challenges that the Saudis have. As I disclosed in the book, the fall of the House of Saud. Just a matter of time, because the world is changing. Now, could be that the young prince now could change the direction. Possibly, possibly not. Except that he doesn't have a good relationship with the U.S. Makes you just wonder what could happen to him down the road. And again, I'm just using history here. I'll take you back to 1975 with the assassination of King Faisal at that time. But King Faisal was assassinated by none other than his nephew. There was no foreign government involved. The issue with Mohammed bin Salman and the U.S. is they don't get along, they butt in head. So he didn't like the fact that the U.S. intelligence agencies were spying on him. They were listening to his conversations and all that stuff. So, but that's a conversation for another day. If you got a chance to read the book, you'll see the details there. Except that certain sections are redacted. That's what Washington called me and said, Mr. O, we need to have this redacted. I say, whatever. So anyway, for the Saudis, you have to look at it this way. And again, you have to go back a few years ago. And just go back to 2017. What happened in 2017? It was King Salman, the current monarch, the current king, went to China. Why do you think he went to China for? Just to say hi to President Xi? No. It's because that was a symbol and a signal for what lying ahead, and what also what the Saudis want, the message they want to send to the United States, that we are pivoting east. And the reason being because the Saudi monarchy rationality at the time for choosing China over the US, because of the economy. That is the reason why. Because China became now the major importer of the Saudi oil. So the Saudis secured a market. It's because with all the hypes about green energy here in the US and all that, Saudis like, should we be even concerned about this? Let's just move east altogether. Second thing is they saw, the monarchy that is, they saw the shift of the wealth from the west to the east. And they wanted to embark on that. This is why, and I'm going to be doing a special program about the recent deal that the Saudis just made with China. It's a $10 billion energy project. So that's all I can say about it right now. And I will detail or provide you info later on. So So that is the idea of why, for us in the United States, we kind of find that the changes of this geopolitical shift is going faster than we can sort of keep up with. Let alone we don't have a strategy in place. Usually, you anticipate about the changes in the geopolitical landscape. That is what a great analyst will do. That is what someone with an in-depth and understanding of the dynamics of global order, how it works, that's what a king and president and prime minister and a head of states and all that will have to think in those terms. You think about it this way. And I'm going to take you back to the images here because I have something you need to see. You think about this image right here. And I'm going to, by the way, I just recorded a video on this because it's a very fascinating dynamics you need to know about. Who's that guy on the left? That's the Algerian president, Abdelmajid Tebboune. Okay. He was invited to Moscow for 3 days. He's still there. I think he's leaving tomorrow as well. And what's the interesting aspect of it is the dynamics, what they signed, the agreement they sign on and all that stuff, which is a reflection of the changes in the global geopolitical landscape. I mean, historically, Algeria has always been a client of the Soviet Union back then and now for Russia. But there is also another concern, is because Algeria has some ongoing tensions with Morocco. Morocco is a U.S. ally. Algeria is a Russia's ally. You can just see the dynamics. And when you take the issue of the Western Sahara, which what the core issue is all about, what is at the heart of it is energy. And this is why it behooves a head of state, doesn't matter who, king or president or prime minister, to understand those dynamics. That's why he or she will have to surround him or herself with a very qualified sort of individuals that can provide an objective assessment. And those should not be yes, sir, yes, ma'am individuals. They should be free to speak their mind, because that's what a head of state will hire them or have them as advisors. If any of you become whatever in a position of power, make sure you surround with people who can challenge you and say the truth to you. Those are the one you want to keep around. Not a person who will kiss up to you because of favors or because they like power, whatever. No, you don't want those people around. And this is, to me, what it seems to be going on as to the global dynamics that's taking place, that the head of states, especially in the Western world, this seems to be, oblivious. I mean, they can be oblivious because it's visible. They can be oblivious to the failure of the policies. From Australia and Canada to Germany and England and France, for that matter, it just doesn't make any sense. So this is why, just to go back to my Saudi talk about Saudi Arabia and China, this is why you start to notice after 2017 some sort of closeness between Saudi Arabia and China. And this is, again, another, what's the word I'm looking for? It's another confirmation. It's a confirmation for the Saudis that the United States leadership is becoming more and more irrelevant, be it in the Middle East or around the world. That is what convinced them to move into that direction. So this is why it's important for you to place that China-Saudi relationship under the microscope of the reality, what it is. Yes, there is cooperation and so forth, but there is also convenience and reciprocity. It goes both ways. The Chinese call it win-win situation. That's what it is. And why is this important? Because on two main fronts, economics and geopolitics. There is no other. Those are the key. If you know how to manage those in any foreign relations, you got it made. with the assumption, of course, you don't think legally, of course, you don't take over the resources of other countries, you don't do this, you don't do that, you kind of deal with them on an equal footing. So, and that's again why the Saudis got closer to the Chinese, because they saw the shift and they saw also the rise of China, because it became evident to them, meaning to the Saudis, that at some point China will overtake the economy of the US. I know it's a truth that if I say this in Washington, I'll become the villain per se. Then I'm gonna like. There's a saying in Washington when I used to work back then. It still holds today. When Washington does not like the message, it tends to shoot the messenger, figuratively. So that is what's at the heart of it. So let me just wrap this up for you guys. Then I'm gonna go and check out a few questions and see where you are joining me from, as I promised you to do at the beginning. So the bottom line, what you are looking at the beginning now of the new security architecture in the Middle East. Yes, the US will still maintain its Fifth Fleet in Bahrain, because Bahrain won't have the guts to say to the US, you need to evac. I don't see Bahrain doing that. There are certain states in the Middle East that they are so weak that that's just the way it is. I'm not pointing fingers at them. I'm just stating the facts. But what you're going to be seeing is the dynamics of how now the economic ventures is the one that's going to be now moving forward in cementing what this shift in the geopolitical landscape in the Middle East. In another word, simply said, economics will be the factor by which the new geopolitical landscape in the Middle East will be guided. That's the bottom line to it. So, and this is the first step of many to come, because remember, it's not an alliance, it's just an entity for now in coordination with China. They're going to have to work out the details. It's no different than France, for example, with BRICS. It was just an interest yet. It takes steps. There's a process going on, and there's a lot to be done before France joined BRICS, and there's too many dynamics now. Now, there is one question I need to ask you before I forget. And the question has to do with India. Where do you think the role of India will be? Because remember one thing, India used to import oil from Iran till it was pressured by the United States, by President Trump, when we withdrew from the GCPOA. What did India end up doing? Stopped, because it had to bow to the US at that time. Now, India's taking a different position. It's challenging the US. When the US tried to pressure India by stopping its import of oil from Russia, India said, no, we're going to keep importing oil because it's to our strategic interest. I will be very interested in the communique that will be issued once Modi, Prime Minister Modi, he's going to be visiting the White House soon, in a few days, as a matter of fact. And I will be very, very curious to see if they ever hold a joint press conference. I mean, nowadays they don't like the U.S. administration or the one handling President Biden. They don't like him to do joint conference because they don't know what he's going to say. Mentally he's not there. Let's just say it straightforward. So what I will be looking for is whether the U.S. now is going to be pressuring India in a different way. That's why, because we in the United States do have a pressure points on India. First one is Kashmir, among many others, without going into the list here. We do have a list of pressure points. But India also has to think about its own strategic interest. The world is shifting. India is moving, being the fifth largest economy in the world, it's moving up. So I think even now it holds the fourth. I'm not sure about that yet, but India, of course, still have a lot work to do. Infrastructure and poverty, those two main things, they have to be done. Otherwise, India can be talking forever. I mean, how would you explain Apple making a decision to move out of India altogether and go back to China, despite what the US administration is saying? That's to me the science. That's how I read it. So I will be, and I will make a video for you guys about that trip, or that visit, rather, not a trip, the visit, and we can always elaborate on it further in a live stream. So, all right, let me see, and that's all I have to say about this. Let me see if you got any question. And by the way, guys, and once again, I don't take you for granted. I appreciate your support, and those who just subscribe to the channel. Your word is what I depend on. I count on. Spread the word for the channel because I want it to grow a little bigger. So it's with your help. That's the only way I can achieve that. And you know the nature of the topics. I don't talk about kitty cats playing, so I don't have time for that. All right, let me go back to the top and see if there are. First of all, where are you joining me from? Oh, Jan Hardcore, you granched very hard about the image. Interesting. So, okay, let me see if you. Where are you joining me from? I did say already some. Oh, this is quick. War between Palestine and Israel. No. I don't see that happening. And it's because if it will be, it's not the Israelis. It's going to be from southern Lebanon. That's where the most concern of Israel is. And to my knowledge, there were some heavy weapons that just moved into southern Lebanon, including missiles. This is why I say, no matter what you hear or read about Israel is going to attack Iran, it's nonsense. Israel cannot fight Iran on its own without the US. That's a certainty, and I have my reasons for why I'm saying this. So, okay, let me see. Where are you joining me from? Quickly here, and we'll do one or two questions, and I'm gonna move on. I have to go take a look at the garden. Some veggies start to grow. Next time I'll snap a picture and share that with you guys. And one of the cheeky is sick, so I gotta figure out what the issue is. So, all right. Yeah, I know it takes a while for oh, hello from Galaxy. Hello to you. So, okay. Oh, let's take a look at Hong Long question. Hello and happy Father's Day. Thank you very much. Yeah, happy Father's Day is tomorrow, guys. So, to all dads out there, what is your opinion with China standing up for Palestine? That's an interesting question because first of all, China is not standing up for. I'm not saying it's wrong. Your question is wrong. That's not what I'm saying. It just if you are to put it within the context of geopolitics, China is not standing up for Palestine. China will not stand up for any country in this context. And the reason being, because by China taking on this issue, the key thing that China is interested in is to ensure that is showing the world its neutrality, because that is what the heart of the issue between Palestine and Israel, that the US couldn't play a neutral and honest broker. We failed to do that. I had a conversation one day with Ambassador Dennis Ross. If any of you can look him up later on and check in. Let me type in his name. It's Dennis Ross. So, and I asked him point blank, like, What the heck are we doing? Why aren't we able to broker a deal? With all the resources and all that, we couldn't do it? Or aren't we playing an honest one? And his answer was kind of, we both kind of, the Palestinians didn't agree to certain things. The Israelis went ahead with the settlement despite our objections and so forth. So he wasn't clear cut. With China, by embarking on this, it's showing that if he was able to broker a deal between Saudi Arabia and Iran, those are arch enemies. And as I said earlier, that goes back hundreds of years, since the beginning of Islam, for that matter. If they were able to broker that, they could do that also for Palestine and Israel. Even though I am not subscribing to that ability yet, because the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is very complicated. That doesn't mean that China can't play an honest role. Is how the process will be sabotaged from behind the scenes. That is where I see the challenge for China is. Now, can China do it? Yes, of course. Look just what happened when China proposed the 12 points for peace between Ukraine and Russia. What happened from the West? This one will be no different. But so far, the reception of Mahmoud Abbas tells me a lot. That's the way I see it. So I hope that answers a little bit whatever you were asking for. Oh, why is it good to put a little bit butter into coffee? Well, first of all, you have to put the right butter. What I mean by butter is the 100% butter, not the margarine, not that stuff. It's because coffee, remember, depends again on the type of coffee you use. Most coffees, if it's not organic, that will be the regular one, which has a lot of mold into it. So you put in some mold into your body. By having that fat, it kind of breaks down the mold that exists in the coffee. I mean, for me, I do it because I like the taste of it, but I also, a good fat is good for your body, despite what you hear. Of course, the pharmaceutical will tell you otherwise, that fat is bad for you and all that. It's all about money, and pharmaceutical controls that. Don't believe in that. So that is the reason why. And I have, by the way, I am working on that health. Remember, we had a conversation about health channel? I didn't forget that. There's a work behind the scenes, and you will know about it. All right, let me see any other question here. Oh, Rafael Lendo, I want to say thank you for your super sticker. Teddy and Ike had power. They were in charge. You're absolutely correct. And that is why sort of the warning was about the military industrial complex back then. Do you guys know, and I'm going to share this with you. Thank you again, Rafael. I truly appreciate it. Did you guys know that back then, when Eisenhower was warning about the military industrial complex, in his speech, there were two terms. It was in his draft, his own. It was written this way, and I had a chance to read it because it's part of history. So no matter what they say, historical facts is not going to lie, especially when you see the writing with your own eyes. So it was written in his draft that congressional and military industrial complex. That's what it was. Then his aide came back to him and said, "Sir, you need to remove congressional from the speech." That's what happened. That's why now we only hear about the military industrial complex. And this is why you're seeing what you're seeing right now in Ukraine. It's a reflection of that. And my big concern, as I always say, is what lies ahead for Asia moving forward. That is where another concern that I have. And I'm keeping an eye. So that's why I do what I do, guys. Is to provide you insights you won't get anywhere else. And I don't know how else to do it. I write books. I used to write articles. I don't write articles anymore. I don't have time. There's only 24 hours in a day, and I have to, maintain my health, my psychological well-being. I have to rest. I have to, I'm structured. and I can only do so much. And I found this is why I gave up a full-time teaching position at university to do this. That's why your support means a lot. Without your support, there's nothing. There's no way I will move forward. So anyway, but I am excited to be here. Anytime I come live, I'm very excited. So, and I mean it. So, all right, let me see one last question here, and I'm gonna go attend to a few other things that I have to do. And by the way, be on the lookout for those 2 videos that I am gonna be releasing soon. So. So there are no questions. So I'm gonna close this out. And by the way, there's somebody who put fascinating time. HZ, fascinating time indeed. You're absolutely correct. Because guys, think of it this way: consider yourself lucky, be alive today, because you are witnessing history in the making before your own eyes. This shift, regardless the chaos, and it will be chaos. It's part of it. You are witnessing this, 20, 30, 40 years from today, you will be talking to your grandkids or whatever, whomever, that you witnessed that when the dust settles later on, you'll see a different world, different approach, different dynamics. So consider yourself. I'm lucky. I'm very grateful to be alive to witness this. And I am contributing to the best of my ability in providing a better reading about how to read the geopolitical landscape. So based on facts, based on substance, and based on my knowledge that I acquired over the years. You're looking at over almost 20 years of experience that I acquired between the military, my professional and academic. So that's anyway, guys, I hope you'll find it very, very informative. And as always, remember, geopolitics impact your daily life in more ways than one. Till next time, guys. Bye-bye.